Good morning. Welcome to today's daily reflection. Now, we all like stories. Most of us like to tell stories, but how many of us tell the story of how we came to faith? Like a great many, however, I feel that my own story is nowhere like Paul's Damascus Road experience, or indeed the story concerning the man at the centre of today's set reading. But is that just an excuse? The reading is from Mark chapter 5, verses 1 to 20. So they arrived at the other side of the lake, in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, a man possessed by an evil spirit came out from the tombs to meet him. The man lived in the burial caves, who could no longer be restrained even with a chain. Whenever he was put into chains and shackles, as he often was, he snapped the chains from his wrists and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he wandered along the burial caves and in the hills, howling and cutting himself with sharp stones. When Jesus was still some distance away, the man saw him, ran to meet him and bowed low before him. With a shriek he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? In the name of God, I beg you, don't torture me." For Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus demanded, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside this man." Then the evil spirits begged him again and again not to send them to some distant place. There happened to be a large herd of pigs feeding on a hillside nearby. "Send us into those pigs," the spirits begged. "Let us enter them." So Jesus gave them permission. The evil spirits came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the entire herd of about 2,000 pigs plunged down a steep hillside into the lake and were drowned in the water. The herdsmen fled to the nearby town and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there, fully clothed, perfectly sane, and they were all afraid. Then those who had seen what had happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs, and the crowd began pleading with Jesus to go away and leave them alone. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him, but Jesus said, "No, go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been." And the man started off to visit Decapolis and began to proclaim the great things that God had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. This is the word of the Lord. Yet, while nearly everyone was relieved at Jesus' departure, one man clearly wasn't, the man who had been healed. He knew there was nothing for him in that community. His support network had already been destroyed by his possession. No one would go near him, let alone trust him, or even listen to him. And they definitely weren't going to let him into their homes. He had no one, nothing at all. He wanted to go with Jesus. Jesus had in effect saved his life, given him his life back. Any cultural expectation then would have had the man remain with Jesus until he could repay this incredible debt of honour. So he begged Jesus to take him with the group as they were leaving, but Jesus refused. Instead, Jesus left the man there with instructions to go and tell everybody what you've experienced. Go and tell them what God has done for you. But he knew that this man named Jesus had saved him. That was all he knew. He had restored his soul. He had revived his honour. He had made him well again. All he had was his story. To him, a Gentile, there was no scriptures to study or back up his story. There wasn't any Bible tracts laying out the gospel in clear terms. There was just his story. But that was all he really needed. Jesus was sending him out to tell his story. And that was certainly no small task. For the reasons the man had wanted to go with Jesus and not stay there were still in force. Jesus was not leaving him in an easy situation. There were going to be innumerable hardships and challenges he was going to have to struggle through. It was going to take a lot of time and effort to get people to trust him again, let alone listen to him. Even seeing his basic needs was going to be a challenge, but his work was vital. He was to share the good news of what Jesus had done for him in a way that Jesus himself couldn't have done. Remember, they were terrified of Jesus. They were probably scared of this man too, but he was one of them in a way that Jesus wasn't. Jesus knew that they weren't ready to hear from him, but he knew they would eventually be willing to at least hear what this man had to say, which is why Jesus tells the man to go and tell everyone about what God had done for him. In our eyes, that might seem unfair, but if we approach the situation with an eternal type of perspective, then it all makes sense. Jesus knew the impact this man could have from someone from his own country, their own ethnicity, especially now that in his right mind he was perfect to demonstrate God's goodness and mercy. The man obeyed and went into Decapolis to proclaim how much Jesus had done for him. And as a result, as the later verse tells us, everyone there marvelled. Like the conversation Jesus had at the well with the Samaritan woman. After meeting Jesus, the woman went back to the village to tell the people that she had met the Christ, and many Samaritans put their faith in Jesus. Eventually, in this man's story, the people of Decapolis recognized the authority of Jesus, which paved the way for his later return to that region. Now, I want to finish not with a prayer, but with a final thought. History, written on the pages of our life, has power and needs to be read. The brokenness of our lives creates a story of God's power. Our story matters. It matters to God. It matters to others. As large or small as we believe our story might be, God has entrusted us with it to help others overcome. This week our prayer should be that God makes us into an open book with words written by God himself. Amen. Now, whatever you do today, for this coming week, do it with compassion and with a smile. Bye for now.